Welcome, movie fans, to Popcorn Talks Anatomy of a Movie, where today we show that you have to add more than just water to make an instant family.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk, we talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Anatomy of a Movie.
Hey, everybody, Demetri Panos here for Popcorn Talks Anatomy of a Movie. And along with my gracious, wonderful co-host, Marisa.
Hello, Demetri.
How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Nice. And also, we're going to have a disembodied voice who's going to join in, Juliet, who handles our engineering and producing. But she watched this movie and she asked if she could be part of the conversation. And of course, we said yes.
You guys are the best. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Thank
Good.
you.
Me too. And today we are talking about instant family. So, right off the top, I can tell you, well, you know what? Off the top, we always give our opinions on this movie. This is a family film that's out right now during the holiday season. We always give opinion when we start and talk of our movies. So I'm going to start to my wonderful co-host, Marisa Serafini. What did you think of Instant Family?
I was really excited for this film. I saw the trailer probably a couple months ago, and I laughed a lot. I was like, yeah, sold. And it's from like a funny side of the adoption care system. And usually when you think adoption, there's like a stigma to it and foster care system because it's not your biological family. There's always like strife and grief with the system in that sense. But I loved how they touched upon it. So in a humorous way where it's not disrespectful. It's actually adding more homage to it. And I think they did a great job. Hilarious. And honestly, watching this, I knew I was going to get like choked up because it's all with a family element. And when I say I properly cried in this film, I properly cried. Like, I lost it in the theater. I was like, damn it, they got me. And it was so good. I want to see this film again.
Yeah. Juliet, please, tell us, what did you think?
I love this movie. Just like
Oh, hey, is that you on screen?
That is me.
Hey,
Hi.
she's not disembodied. She's here.
I see
Hey.
a face with the voice.
I really enjoy this movie. I think, as Marisa was saying, I love a good movie that makes you laugh, it makes you cry, just a wide range of emotions, and it was honestly one of I think my favorite movies I've seen this year.
Yeah, listen, I'm not going to disagree with any of what has been said. I will only add to, yes, I liked the marketing, the trailers I had it in. The movie is near and dear to my heart for a couple of reasons. Number one, I do think that it is a movie they don't make anymore here in Hollywood. And that is, look, this isn't going to be a franchise picture, but this is
It's a feel-good.
by far a feel-good movie. It's for me, it's it's feel-good movie of the year. And they don't make crowd pleasers like this, or they haven't in an extremely long time.
And to piggyback off of that, I think on top of it, not only is it feel good, it's associated with such a great cause and a purpose, which is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to talk about that cause and purpose and its inspiration. And again, I liken it to the movie Parenthood, which I believe came out in the early 90s.
1990.
With Steve Martin, Mary Steenburgen, it was directed by Ron Howard.
Right, and watch the television show Parenthood as well.
And
So good.
this movie had that feel where it juggled drama, it juggled comedy, emotions. It earned every emotion in this. And this movie really did. It makes you well up in more than one occasion, but it's earned. The other thing about this movie is the very first time for my years of being a film reviewer that my review was actually quoted in the marketing materials.
Oh, hey.
Very, very first time ever. I had seen the movie in Orlando when I was there for Show East. And I had done a sort of a retweet from Instant Family, the movie. And I had said how much I liked it, gave a mini review. I got a response like a week later asking if they can use my review for their marketing material. I said absolutely. Absolutely, by all means. It's a movie that I really, well, I was totally honored and flabbergasted that somebody would actually come out and ask my permission. And of course, I mean, the movie earns every one bit of its emotion. We're going to talk about box office. We'll talk about certain things about this movie, but it really deserves to be seen, I think, because, again, it's something that is not currently out in the marketplace. And to walk out of a movie feeling as good as you do walking out of this movie, I think that's sort of special.
And I think the great thing about this film, it appeals to a lot of different demographics.
Oh,
It appeals to the older adult generation. It appeals to the younger, because we have a bunch of kids and teenagers also in it. It appeals to the people who love comedy, but it appeals to the people who love drama and sentimental. There's so many different people who can enjoy this film, and there's a rewatchability factor too, and we'll get more into it.
Yeah.
But it appealed to the adoption community, to the foster community. I'm adopted personally, so like it might sound biased, but totally. So that it hits near and dear to me personally, because I've been a part of that community, and I think they do a great job. They cover a lot of different classes in this movie,
and they do it with much love and respect. I mean, I felt that every laugh, every emotion was well earned. The movie never falls into a schmaltz cavern. It never becomes over schmaltzy. It's right on that line. I mean, Sean Anders, co-writer, director, I think he does an amazing job in juggling the drama with the comedy and then intertwining it and making this a true, excellent family film, to your point, in which everybody can watch. You can watch it as a family. I think it's a great date movie. I think it's a great movie to go to with your friends. And I think you come out of it, you to your point earlier too, you feel inspired to, you want to be better. So I want to get into and start talking about the movie is somewhat semi-autobiographical.
yeah.
Which is fantastic. And this is a writer-director who did like Horrible Bosses 2, Daddy's Home 2, all movies we've done here. We have covered his library,
Yeah.
Mr. Anders' library.
I don't know about you guys, but I was definitely not shocked the fact that it was based off somewhat on a true story because of how real it was. It felt like, sometimes people try to tell someone else's story and that doesn't always work. Here you could tell it was their own story.
Right. But sometimes with that is that sometimes when it's a creative's baby, sometimes they overthink it and they become like overprotective of their own baby. And when it comes to fruition, it could be the better movie because they were so overthinking it. But I think Anders was brilliant in what he allowed in the movie. He knew his comedic beats. He knew how to make it real. So there was a realism to the emotion, but some of the humor is definitely movie humor, right? So you laugh, but then when it gets really all gooey and emotional, you just buy into it. And the kids were never annoying.
No, except for the little girl kind of got annoying in some points, but that was on purpose because she was supposed to be a terror. But I did like there were elements and that felt realistic that a lot of parents actually do go through. I mean, the real struggles of having rambunctious kids being a little bit too much for them, and the horrible thoughts that go through parents' head is like, it'd be great if we were single again, if we didn't have family, our lives would be easier. So those are relatable in that sense for just like parents just want to go back to the way things were before they had kids. And it doesn't make you a terrible person, it just makes you like you're human.
Right.
And I like that. And even from the kids' perspective, they touched upon what the kids feel like in those situations. So I like how you can see everyone's different mindset of the exact same scenario. Right. And I think it's good because usually you get like your one-sided story and that's what we follow. But to get different generations and mentality, they touched upon that beautifully.
That's a fantastic point because I really did get the plight of, I got the plight of Ellie and Pete. Yeah. There are a couple who they've been on the fence. They may have talked about having children. They're on the fence about having
They're
children.
stuck in the ways.
Right.
They wanted to start a family and do something new.
And I believed the plight. So, and it's very much like Sean Anders and his wife. He said, in interviews, he goes, life had happened. We weren't sure whether we wanted an infant. And then we started thinking adoption. And they were like, well, what if we get a 5-year-old? That way they sort of catch up to us. Which is kind of what happens in this movie. And he said, and this is again Sean, they weren't looking for teenagers, but they were at a fair.
Yeah.
So much like Pete and Ellie, who are getting into this, taking the training, and they come to this fair, which when you think about the fair, it's almost like auctioning off kids. It's a really bizarre.
Not really auctioning, just like more window shopping for
window
kids.
shopping, yeah. And
It's terrible when you look at it, but it's true.
And I can't even imagine how it is for the adult and how it is for the kids. But I thought they caught the teenagers really great. Lizzie was like, excuse me, we can hear you.
And I also liked how the movie pointed out that this was, really weird and terrible. They're like, this is strange, but this is the way it is. Go figure it out. So it was great they put attention to it. 'Cause
they did.
Right, there's
this actually
self-awareness.
happens.
Yeah, there's self-awareness. I love how they touched upon that. They're
Yeah.
like, we're not awful people, is what we do. But it is, they are real life events that happen all the time. And that's how people get paired up. It's like you have to go visit and see everybody.
Right.
Just so you can gauge who might fit best with you.
Yeah, and I really, and that aspect of the story is Sean and his wife, they actually found 3 children, siblings. The oldest daughter actually was inspiration for part of the story, in which he said the oldest daughter did have that bond and connection still with the
Lizzie.
mom. Well, I'm talking about in real life.
Oh, yeah.
But so much so that the adoption of those 3 kids fell apart. So then they went on, they found another 3 kids in which they adopted. But he felt that that original story with Lizzie, the connection of the mom, makes for good cinematic storytelling. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad he kept that memory with him. So he was able to, Lizzie becomes that character. And the mom, and Lizzie by Isabella Moner, I thought, number one, I think we're watching a star in the making with this girl.
She's definitely up and coming.
Definitely up and coming. But I bought it. And, we'll talk Rose Byrne and Mark Wahlberg together. I just bought them.
Yeah, I like their pairing. They need to do more movies together.
I would be there.
Yeah, I would totally watch them over and over again.
They were great together. And it was almost, they had this chemistry where their dialogue.
And then back and forth, they played off of each other very well.
Oh my God. And as parents, they were great too.
But also they're likable. And
Absolutely.
and then I think the movie does a great job of establishing that they actually are good people, they're likable people. They want to do the right thing.
Right.
And like their intentions are honest and genuine.
Right.
And that's what you like, because unfortunately when you get into foster care, there's always people who only do it for the money and for the paycheck. And it's not the best reasons why they do it. But it's watching and following these people, it's like, no, they actually want a family.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like their journey to getting the family. First, they think they're just getting a teenager. And it's like, well, she has siblings,
She comes with siblings.
And they're like, oh my God, 3 kids? Oh,
Why would you do that?
Why would you show us those pictures? They're so adorable. And you understand. But you understand the parents, and to your point from earlier, you understand the viewpoint from the kids. This is an adjustment. And you see the kids going through this adjustment just as much as you see the parents doing it as well. And they make note of that. The scene was like, do we go in and kiss him goodnight? You're overthinking this. Like, that was one of the cutest moments I've thought of this movie.
Yeah.
And it doesn't come off as being rigged or like so manipulative.
No, it's funny because you have to remember, like, these kids have been in the system longer than they've been, quote unquote, parents. So I like how the kids brought their own experience to, like, this is just another, well, when this started, it was like, this is just another family we're moving into.
Yeah. And I got to, after I watched the movie, some of my colleagues, and at the time I didn't even know, had adopted children, and they came out and they were all red-eyed.
Oh,
I mean, they
yeah.
were all red-eyed and welled up, and they said, this movie captures it really well, and to the point where they said the trash bag thing is real, the courthouse teddy bear is real, and the other reason, and this I heard from a couple of people again who I didn't even know they had adopted children, said loved the fact that it made fun of The Blind Side, because people who are in this adoptive thing, we hate that movie. And I was like, and this movie does make fun of The Blind Side.
Yeah, it does.
It's like so, and the way that that's brought up too is really funny and clever, and it works. So I got that sense that there was much tender loving care to be brought into this movie, and then for me it was all about the acting. I just bought them. I bought everybody. The kids, like I said, I felt like
They
the little
broke your
girl.
heart.
They did.
So like the moments, and we'll get more into it, but the moments that were really funny because they're being kids, so you're like, oh, they're teenagers, whatever. But when the moments where it got real, like this is what they're thinking in their situations, and especially Lizzie wanting to go back to her mother, very conflicting. Yeah, those are real emotions, and they're man, when I cried, man. I was like wiping my sleeve. It was ugly.
Juliet, how did you cry?
Oh, 100%. I tried not to because sometimes you don't want people looking at you. But
Right.
there was no way I could not. I
Yeah.
just was bawling. I think especially with the scene and just the mom coming back, and then just them being in court, and then ultimately at the end when everything kind of works itself out, it's just so emotional, and those were really true happy tears. And once again, wow, I did cry a lot, you guys. You are right. At the credits,
Yeah.
I cried for the credits with
Yeah.
those pictures. That
Yeah,
was
with the real
really, really
pictures.
nice because those were, although this is based on a true story, those pictures were actually real stories as well. And
Including Sean Anders, his wife, and his kids.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And and I agree with you. And again, that's why I go back. There hasn't been a movie like this in such a long time. And I think it's a forgotten art. And I think I want more people to go see this movie, because you're right about the tears of joy, like the emotions that you feel. This is the power of good movies. Mm-hmm. If you can walk out of a movie just feeling good about yourself and somewhat inspired, maybe to do something good, right? This movie hits it all, and it doesn't do it cheaply. I understand why the kids, and this is probably why I didn't find them to be annoying, because there was anger, there was hurt there. Even in the little girl, they're in the system. You understand. You understand from the parents' point of view that they're in uncharted territory. They think that they're doing great, which I loved. Mm-hmm. Are you kidding me? This is easy. And then it's not so easy. And you got it from them. And the way that Mark Wahlberg and Rose Byrne, their performances, I think, were really great and real.
Yeah, and you're talking about like, well, when's the last time you had a film like this? The last movie that kind of touches upon it, that really, I mean, when I cried in that film as well, Martian Child. You ever saw John Cusack?
Sure.
And I love how Joan Cusack made an appearance in this movie. But
awesome.
The amazing cameo. But the movie Martian Child that came out probably early 2007, 2008, around that year.
Look it up.
I lost it, because that is a story. If you haven't watched that movie, go right now after us, obviously. But if you watch that film, the story is about adopting a little boy. But there is a moment where the little boy is like, why didn't my parents want me? And it hits you because it comes from the child perspective. Like, this is what they're thinking. How come their original family didn't want them? And like, being an adopted child, yeah, it comes, like, we all think of that. And we never had the right answers or the best answers to that. And they touched upon it in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, want to be with your biological family, but you can't.
Right.
And it hits. It really does. It really does. So, and I think that movie covers comedy and drama as well, just like this film.
Yeah, I want to talk. So Isabella Moner as Lizzie, there's a lot of scenes in which she's fantastic, but the scene in which Ellie, Rose Byrne, is brushing her hair. Mm-hmm. And she goes from being a little tense, a little like standoffish to she's appreciating it. And then when Ellie does the nice thing about leaving the brush, there's the accept. If
Switches.
I accept the brush, that means I accept them.
A new mother.
You're right. And it's painful as an audience member when you see that and she doesn't. You're like going, "Oh my God! You thought they had that moment."
This is
that close.
the moment they're finally starting to bond.
Yes.
Yeah, I think they had that moment. We're so close to it. I also think that it was a way. It was also an acknowledging that my mom and I no longer have that relationship of her
Right.
brushing my hair, and now that's just no longer the reality. And I think that was more so where it was coming from. I think it was a little less about the foster mom and more so about feeling like she's closing a door to a chapter she's not ready to
Agreed.
do.
And I think that the way that it played out and the way that it was performed, I thought was brilliant because it works from an emotional level. You want this family to bond. You want it to work because the parents are trying so hard and to understand and to navigate these waters. And the kids are just trying to understand the situation they're in. The younger kids are getting it a little bit more, as the teenager, Lizzie's in her ways and she wants and fights to get her mom back. I felt the way you did, Julie, when the mom comes back into the picture, you're like, oh.
You knew it was going to happen because they were finally starting to bond like a real family.
Right.
And then you have the actual biological family come back in
Fly in the ointment.
and mess it up.
Yeah.
When we took the whole movie for them just to get to where they are now.
Yep.
Then someone else breaks it up.
Let me ask you something. I mean, because at that point when she showed up, my first question was, did that happen to Sean Anders and his wife? What's going to happen? Like, so far this movie has me going up and down, but are the kids actually going to go back with the mom? Like, I felt for a couple of minutes that could actually happen.
It could because
I was almost believing the mom because I didn't know her.
that's always the fear of foster parents and adoption parents, adoptive parents. It's like when the biological family comes in because there's actually like legal, I don't know the exact rules, I should, but the biological parents do have legal rights to find their own children.
Right.
And that's always scary for the actual adoptive and foster parents. Like that is a fear. And I liked how they touched upon that too, because even when we got the moment of the mother, you can tell she wanted the kids, but she knew she wasn't in a place to actually take care of them as much as she wanted. She couldn't. And that also breaks your heart too, because you knew that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very realistically played out. From a movie-going audience, from me being in the audience, the resolution, I'm glad it happened the way it happened. I wanted this family to work. And speaking of family, there's one woman we haven't quite mentioned yet, and that's Margot Martindale as Grandma Sandy. Grandma Sandy
She was
awesome.
so fun.
And a
So
voice of
fun.
reason.
Yeah.
And an amazing voice of reason. The scene at the amusement park where Lizzie goes off, and then she comes back, and Grandma Sandy's like, "Where were you, Baba? Oh, you got me that? Oh, that's such a nice shirt. That's great. That's so nice of you to do." I loved Margot Martindale in this movie because she was fun, but she was the parent that would understand more than her.
Yeah, and that's what I love because she was the grandma. She's been a parent longer than these foster parents have been. And I loved how she came in and she knew when to pick the battles. Like, this is something that you shouldn't get upset with. This is something you should. But as a good grandmother and an actual parent, that she brought humor to it.
She did.
Like, no, don't be mad at this. We're going to Six Flags.
Right, we're going.
Like, get over it. We're going to have some fun.
Yeah. Yeah, she was, everybody in this movie, she was fantastic. And again, I think it really led to, I believe, some of the realism of the movie, the humanistic nature of this movie, where it didn't just have to rely on slapstick and situation. It relied on true emotion and things happening. And when Mark Wahlberg and Rose Byrne, where Pete and Ellie switched into parent mode, you really bought that they were doing their best.
Yeah.
And I think
Well,
that's what hurts so much if things weren't going to happen.
Right, and you mentioned like slapstick. Yeah, the basketball was hilarious. 'Cause getting in the face is always funny. But when poor Juan, it was like accident prone that he is. But with the actual nail gun, you think it could be funny, but no. That's where the whole parent switch mode went in.
100%.
They were legit. They were trying to be chastising and like have ground rules and stuff as parents and try to have those boundaries. But the moment like your children get hurt, you just get went into protective mode. And I like that switch, and we saw that.
That was great. And the fact taking him into the hospital and that Lizzie too came to be with her brother. Again, if there's a movie about family bonding and togetherness, this is it.
This one.
Yeah, I swear, people, like, this is that holiday movie. And you get it in scenes, but it really makes up this wonderful whole. And the scene in which you're talking about is a pure example of that. And it becomes, we're not in where Lizzie at the beginning is in competition. Oh, I'll take over from here. I'll be the parent. But it morphs into Pete and Ellie becoming the true parents. And I loved that transition and how it worked and how everybody was falling into place. The other great scene is the tearing down the house.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, we saw, like, I feel Lizzie had the biggest arc in this
Oh,
movie.
absolutely.
And I love that because with the whole hospital scene, this is where she changes and actually now tries to protect. As awful teenager, just being a teenage girl she was, in the scene that led up to the nail gun scene, into the moment afterwards and how she immediately switched because she didn't want to leave that family and she knows that like she's actually in a better position. You saw that just within 2 scenes, let alone the entire film.
Yeah. Now I think Isabella Moner she is a star in the making. The first movie I recall her in was a Transformer movie. Michael Bay more or less discovered
we
her.
talked about it.
And we talked about how great she was,
too.
right?
Yeah.
And then she's in Sicario 2, which is such a completely different role than what she was in Transformers. And she nails it. She's the drug lord's daughter. And she was amazing in this movie. Switching back from speaking Spanish to English to being tough, to being a child. She was amazing in that movie. And then in this movie, again, her wide range of being angry, being sympathetic, comedic beats.
Yeah.
She's fantastic. And she sings.
Yeah,
she sings. She's the final, at the end credits, it's her singing. And they show her singing, cutting the track.
I didn't know she could sing.
I didn't either. I can't say enough about how well poised as an actress, as a young actress that she is. I hope her continued success. We know that Mark Wahlberg and Rose Byrne are good actors, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think enough can't be said about their, we talked about their chemistry, but they really are folks good in this movie. I buy them as a couple. And I think, I know Mark Wahlberg has kids, but I think they were able to bring their own experience to this, and it works. And they can make the comedy like, I got my first daddy. Oh my God, can I help you suck? But you get that competitive nature within the boundaries of this movie, and their chemistry, that's what makes it so funny. Honey, can I help you with anything? No.
Nope.
Get away.
But and that's also why you like Ellie so much, because you want her to get that same reciprocated love from the kids too. She has to work harder for it, but when she finally officially gets there, especially when Juan says, "I like good night, mommy," she's like, "What would you say? Can you say that again?"
Yeah.
she was trying so hard, but you like it because you like both of these characters. You want them to get to that parental level that they're getting recognized by their kids.
Absolutely. I can't agree with you more, and I can't stress enough how like the magic that this movie works for an audience, and when I got out, I actually aside from talking to colleagues who had adopted, I was interested, I know my own strengths and I'm not in a position to adopt, but the process, it made me curious.
Oh,
Very much.
I could tell you all about it. My family,
Please.
well, it
Yeah,
is very,
share
very
what you
relevant.
want to.
My
Sure.
parents, so I'm one out of 5 kids.
5.
We're all adopted. Me and
Oh, you
all my
are?
siblings, we're all adopted. My parents, God love them. They're seriously angels. They're gonna go straight to heaven. They're not even gonna stop at the white pearly gates. They're just gonna get right in because they are amazing. They were also foster parents too. So not only are they adopted parents, they were also foster parents for a long, long time. So they always loved kids. And yes, the actual adoption process, they put you through a lot of loops and they put you through the ringer and stuff, but that doesn't mean it's not possible. It's definitely possible. They did it 5 freaking times individually, so it really depends on how the parents. You have to have a strong foundation with those two, and like the support system and how much you really want it. My parents wanted it. They wanted it 5 times. They actually wanted it 6 times. They decided to stop with me. No,
You broke the mold, Marisa.
I did. Like, I know we're getting a little off, but
It's okay.
but
I'm fascinated.
my dad always wanted 6,
Right.
and they stopped at 5. So, yeah,
One of the Brady Bunch.
yeah, they wanted. My dad wanted 6 kids.
That's funny.
And my mom was like, "No, with your next wife, you can get your 6 children."
That's awesome.
So I mean, it's possible. But I come from a very loving adopted family,
Yeah.
and it also helps as an adopted kid that I had other people that were also adopted too. So
Sure.
it doesn't feel taboo.
Right.
It was very normal
get it.
for me personally growing up. Whereas other people, they don't like to talk about it as much. I was like, I don't have a problem with it.
Sure.
It really just depends on how you grew up with it.
Well, I appreciate you sharing with us. I honestly never knew.
Right. And I was exposed to foster kids too. I met the kids that they fostered.
Right.
So it's not new for me.
Yeah.
It might be new for someone else getting into the system, but I have lived this system. I know it.
Wow. Okay. So this movie really did strike a chord, huh?
Yeah, it
I
hit
mean, it
home
had
to me.
to.
So as an adopted kid, like I think this movie did a great job of touching upon it.
Right.
It didn't feel disrespectful whatsoever.
Yeah. That's what I loved about the movie, is that it never disrespected the family. I also loved how it showed. How Pete and Ellie would second guess themselves. Are we making the right decision? Like, are we cut out to do this? Like, and they were inspired by their friends or their sister-in-law.
And their family,
and
they had their
right.
own competitiveness within their family.
Right.
It's like you always have to be the perfect one, and just everyone else doubting them made them want it even more.
Right. Well, yeah, it's not like you're going to have kids.
And
What does that look for?
I
Go
also
ahead.
really liked the scene when they were second guessing this decision, and they were like, "Okay, we can just take them back. We can take them back."
Right,
Because that was, it was funny and a little sad because part of it was a little true. And I also really enjoyed in that scene how they were saying, "But I'm gonna miss everyone thinking we're amazing people."
Right.
Right.
And that I could see perhaps Sean and his wife having that conversation, but again, it goes to, they second guess whether or not they would be appropriate parents.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to the point of this movie being so honest.
Yes.
Because whether people admit it or not, I'm sure there's those conversations that maybe couples don't have together, but they're definitely having it in their
Sure.
head
In their
after
heads.
a long day and crazy things happening with the kids. I'm sure, and even parents who have children on their own, you're probably like, "Oh, was this the best decision? Wasn't my life better before these kids?"
Well, and to your point though, if you're writing a movie about this sort of thing, in many cases you might shy away from that, right? Because it shows a sense of selfishness, and you have to walk a line because you don't want to think that your main protagonist, your parents, are jerks, right?
Right.
But it was handled in such a way you understood what they were thinking about, and deep down you sort of kind of got the sense that they weren't going to bring them back anyways.
No.
You know that they were joking. They were
tired.
and they were coming up with justification for
Yeah.
this conversation. But you just knew, like, when they show Pete going online, like, away from his wife to look at kids, you saw him melting down.
He wanted it to.
Yes. And you just bought them going into it. And then when they go to the classes,
And when you see everybody else, you're like, these are actually the most normal people, the normal
were.
couple out of
they
everybody.
were, yeah, they were.
They were funny. Like, oh man, Octavia Spencer and Tig Notaro.
Oh my God. Again, put them in movies together. They were so
Brilliant.
good.
Yeah.
They were so good together. Again, I cannot say enough about this. And I would thank Sean Anders and company for making this movie, because we need more movies like this. I think in today's world, we need this escape. We need this positive thing. This brings, I think, can bring people together.
The definition of a family movie.
It's the definition of a feel-good, crowd-pleasing movie that isn't offensive. Okay, one of the kids says "fuck" once. If
It was
one,
so funny.
I know.
They used their one,
They
and they used
their
it
one,
effectively.
and it was effective. And if that's what's going to offend you and turn you away from the movie, then stop going to the movies. Because this, I mean it. Like, we need movies like this today. There's so much going on and so much distraction that when I walked out of this, I just felt good, and I laughed. And everybody listen, Juliana Gamiz, who played Lita, she was so cute. And Juan Gustavo Quiroz, the kids were great. Octavia Spencer were great. Alan Rachel is Kim. That couple was great. Have a nice argument. See you later. We're not arguing.
Yeah. Even the woman who played the one who wanted the athletic child.
The athletic-
You're like, again, bad reasons to get into the foster care.
Absolutely.
And it was so funny when ironically she got like the least opposite of what
Right.
she wanted. And you you don't really feel for her, but you're like, yeah, that's what you get. Karma.
Right.
It is karma, but it makes it funny.
It made it funny. And I have to also point out Julie Haggerty.
Yeah.
She was...
Especially when her face was all covered in the marker. You're
Oh,
trying to
it'll
take her
wash off.
seriously.
Yeah. It'll wash off.
But like she's giving
It's
like
Sharpie.
life advice and her face is covered in Sharpie.
And also the banter at the end with the two grandmas just kind of fighting for the attention. I thought that was really cute.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so it's just a whole nother generation of competitive parents.
Right.
And on top of it, it also shows how this is really truly family and everyone's embraced them. You know what I mean? I really enjoyed that they're acting like real grandmothers because that's what they are.
Yes.
Yeah. There's
Agreed.
actually, I believe, I mean, it's different and a lot of people, break the rule. But this is what I grew up with. When you first adopt children, there's actually a time limit of how before you have to spend with the children before you expose them to extended family.
Right.
So sometimes it could be like 2 weeks, or sometimes it can be a month.
Wow.
Just to acclimate the kids to living at home, the different living situations, having parents, and being taken care of by other people.
Sure.
There's actually a definitive timeline
Wow.
before you can actually expose
Yeah.
them to more people.
That's very interesting. I think, is it because if not, it's just maybe a little too overwhelming, is what you're saying?
Yeah, too overwhelming for children. It changes, and like I don't know this exact legal rule, but that is recommended when you first adopt children.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about Lizzie and Isabella Moner again. So apparently she was only the second person to come in and read. And on her read, the second person, they were like, that was it. Apparently she had them all in tears for who she was reading for. And she was so real, Anders says, and grounded and heartbreaking that when she left, we turned over her headshot and were delighted to read that she has her master's in social work. How does she have a master's in social work? I don't understand that. She seems a little young. But
She could be a genius.
so just getting Pete and Ellie's foster kid's birth mother in a heartbreaking scene, the final act. So a former foster kid named Marie Green offered up notes in the script, and she became the official Lizzie consultant,
Yeah.
which is cool, before joining the film as a production assistant. And Green helped provide guidance for Lizzie's portions. And yeah, I just thought that you're right. Lizzie has an arc in this film, as do the parents. I think everybody has a learning curve that by the end it's accomplished.
Right.
Yeah,
And it
they're
makes.
all.
Oh,
Sorry.
no.
They're all learning, and they're all, as you're saying, there's such growth within each character. You see the parents just take more ownership in their, qualifications as parents, and then you see the children dropping their guard and being more trusting to these strangers who then eventually become their family.
Yeah.
That's huge growth. That takes a lot.
Yeah.
Right. And it makes sense that Lizzie's character, she's older, she's a teenager who
Of
has
course.
a whole range of emotions than what the younger Juan and Lita would, because it makes sense that Lizzie, who's the most conflicted, and you can understand her story between the foster family and her real mother, the
Right.
biological, and she's torn. And as audience, you watch her entire journey
Yeah.
between the two.
Yep. No, I think, and then it comes to this wonderful conclusion. I mean, the movie comedy aspect of it. This I can't confirm whether or not this happened, but it seemed written for the movie. Is the janitor of the high school,
Oh,
and then
this
the
was a
confusion
funny
with
story,
Red. It was.
It's another situation where they're trying to get closer to Lizzie.
Right.
Like she comes with a lot of obstacles, whether you like it or
Absolutely.
not. But this is the parents trying to be good parents. Is like, well, what are you doing with our daughter?
What are you doing with our daughter? And it's that mistaken identity scene, and the poor redheaded kid. Oh my God! Like you just
So
felt.
sweet.
I know, and it's good that he comes back at the end of the movie. But where it leads, though, is it ends up on our parents being taken away by the police.
Right.
'Cause
They took
actually-
it too far.
They took it too far, and it's also part of how they, quote unquote, they lose the kids, because of this. And then there's the whole letter writing thing, and when you that's where you cried, right? When we read the
for
letter.
sure.
Oh yeah.
For sure. When not the letter in the court, the letter when they finally find Lizzie and they hand it to her. Yeah.
Yes.
And I also thought that neighbor, and this is what
Joan Cusack.
Joan
Joan
Cusack.
Cusack was just giving such comedic relief. You're crying, and then you're like, ha ha. They're crying some more, and it just
Exactly.
again shows how many layers this movie has.
Right.
Exactly. It's a moment where you're legit bawling your eyes out, but then Joan Cusack with her comedic timing, you're like, you're doing a great job. Keep it up.
You
keep it
are.
up.
And
And you're like, yeah. You just keep going.
she's perfect
Emotions,
for the
just
role,
emotions.
and it was a perfect juggling act.
I have pie.
Come on over.
And
I
the two social workers end up on going as well, which is so absurd,
Right.
and so
Yeah.
funny. Like, why not? You know what? You deserve some pie. Come on.
Yeah, come on.
Right. The-
I'm going
like,
for pie.
legit, the last 20 minutes of this movie, I was a mess. I was
Yeah.
a mess because my emotions were everywhere.
Yeah.
In a good way.
In a really good way.
It was like unequivocal mess.
And that's why number one, it was an extremely proud moment for me to be asked to call it the feel good movie of the year, and they haven't made a movie like this in a while. And then it bums me out because that Paramount has this really good movie on their hands, and I just go, well, why the heck? Because they moved it up.
Yeah, they did. They
And-
wanted it around family time, which is Thanksgiving.
I get it, but I want to talk about this. I liked the trailer, but I also think
I love the
that
trailer.
what the trailer can't capture is the emotion, like the good emotion. It almost makes it look like it's
Just
like
a comedy.
daddy's home kind of a
Yeah,
comedy.
just a comedy.
Right?
The movie.
So it's hard, and I understand that. My whole thing is, so currently, as of November 28th, the movie's made $38 million. They opened this movie up against Crimes of Grindelwald and Wreck-It Ralph 2. Okay, right in a very crowded, in a very crowded
Both of those are sequels.
sequels. It's Thanksgiving. It's a very crowded time for him because Creed 2 also opened
Also
up
a
in that
sequel.
same time. Also a sequel. Not necessarily the same audience, but still, it's grabbing audience. And I just have to ask, why did you decide you're not going to spend the money to market up against those bigger films? You're just not. Like, these are big sequels.
Yeah.
You can't compete. You're not budgeting unless you're going to throw a gobs of money to market Instant Family to compete with these. You're going to get lost in the shuffle. There's so much. I just wonder, would it have been a better idea to release this movie in January, where there isn't so much competition, or at least release
Or
it
even
now?
earlier February, earlier November.
Right.
I mean, they released it the second week of November, but
Right.
even early, the first week of November could have helped them.
Yeah, it came out November 16th.
Yeah.
I think closer to Christmas would have been a better play, honestly.
But again, Christmas is going to have Mary
Christmas
Poppins.
is-
that is true.
Yeah.
It's going to have
Christmas is even a harder holiday to
Bumblebee,
sell your
which is
movie.
Paramount. Oh my God! And go ahead.
Sorry, just a quick question. 'Cause,
Please.
like, for someone who does, who enjoys movies a lot but doesn't know too much about the business, when you have a movie, how do you really determine that release date? Is the studio allowed to be like, oh, you know what, Creed's coming out, maybe this isn't the best time, let's wait, or do they just not really have that power and things are kind of decided?
No, actually, well, the way it works is you look through a release schedule, you look at a competitive calendar to see what's coming out. You pretty much know what you have, and you make the distribution department, the head of distribution, along with the team, will make a recommend and say, we should plant our flag here because we believe that there's nothing like this movie. There isn't competition for us. And we feel that we're going to stretch. We have a good enough movie. So the way I look at Paramount is they probably felt November 16th going into Thanksgiving, right? Kids are going to be out of school. They knew that they were going to get good reviews. So the idea was, after they see Grindelwald and after they see Ralph, our word of mouth will still grow. And they got an A on Cinema Score. And I believe an 80...
It's a high rating movie.
A really high rated movie. And I believe it was like an 81% or... It's in the mid 80s
Yeah, it's like
from Rotten Tomatoes, which is fantastic.
87 for Tatometer.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic for this movie. So they probably thought that they're going to go,
Word
they
of
can
mouth.
have legs, right? My thing is, I think they picked too crowded of a time period for this movie to come out because they're not going to dump the money to mark. Crimes and Grindelwald is Warner Brothers. It's a sequel to a major franchise. Wreck-It Ralph 2 is Disney. It's a sequel to a big movie, and it's their animation. Disney and Warner Brothers, for those movies, dumped a ton of marketing dollars into it. Paramount is one of the major 7 studios, right? But this movie's $48 million. How much are they really going to spend? Like, they can't outspend from a marketing standpoint. So I think they were hoping that the word of mouth was going to help this. But I really think that this movie deserved...
It gets lost.
It got lost.
It gets lost, unfortunately, and it's a great film.
And it's holding up, but I wanted it to do better. I had hoped that it would do better because it's a movie that... I want Hollywood to make more movies like this.
Or they could have, like, I'm trying to just think of another weekend that would have helped maybe around Memorial. And that's in May.
Sure.
But
that's a
early
very
summer.
crowded time.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
like early summer, midsummer.
But you're trying to pick a slot in which you're either going to counteract. So that's why you'll usually notice when a comic book movie comes out, like an Avengers movie, right? Usually around that time, they'll release a woman's picture. Something that goes counter against that audience where they think they can draw in some money.
Counter programming.
It's counter programming. This one, there was just too much family product out in the marketplace, and they weren't going to outspend those bigger studios, or they weren't going to outspend those studios. I don't want to say they're bigger studios. Paramount in its own right is a big studio.
Yeah.
I just wish they just put it in a time period like now where there's no family film. Like, those movies are out already.
This particular weekend.
Right? Why not? Go into Mary Poppins, lead into Mary Poppins, or come out in January once the kids are back in school. Come out then, because 87 and an A movie should do much better. And when you have a Mark Wahlberg movie, particularly when you see what Daddy's Home does, and I think this movie is far better than Daddy's Home.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Daddy's Home's
sure.
funny. This is a far better movie.
And it appeals to a bigger demographic.
I think so.
Daddy Home really appealed to really just the men.
Sure. You know, but this is a better movie. And it saddens me. Like, this movie should be making $100 million. It should be. When they made these kinds of movies in the 90s, like Parenthood, those are $100 million movies.
Those are huge movies.
And they weren't on as many screens as this movie is, which this was 3,200 screens. So it's hard to compete. And it's too bad that it could get lost in a shuffle. Its holds have been pretty good, meaning its percentage drop from day to day and weekend to weekend had
pretty
been
strong.
pretty decent.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, that's how a distribution department will look at. They look at a competitive calendar and see where their movie can best be slotted with the least amount of competition or the least amount of what's going to take away from my movie. How do I do it? And can I market it? Can I spend the marketing budget to make a movie release on that date and try to make it successful? So there is a lot of chess playing and a lot of flag planning. The other thing, to your point, is many times a studio will pick a date, and then another studio like Disney. Oh, Disney is famous
Disney
for this.
loves to. Yeah.
They will jump on that date, and what happens? That movie, that first plan in there, they get off the date because
Yeah.
they know that they can't.
Disney
compete.
switches their own movies all the freaking time.
All the time.
All the time. Like, they push Toy Story 4 back just to release this movie.
Right.
You're like, release, Wreck-It Ralph and all that.
Yeah. So
They do it with their own movies. They're like, nope, let's switch these.
it's a juggling act for sure. And in this one, I'm not sure that it paid off. I wish. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
my last
No,
question
no,
is.
No, it's not a. Please.
So I'm assuming if they have to pull out though of a different date, so then he comes in, something comes in, and just not a good time, that must cost money, doesn't it? So maybe they're just like, oh wait, it's going to cost too much money, it's too much of a hassle, let's just stick with this, even though it's not the best thing.
It depends on how far out. I
Okay.
mean, like, you're not gonna. It's rare. I'm not saying it's never happened, but it's rare that you're gonna pull a movie out a month from release, unless the movie is really stinky.
Or they don't know how to properly market it.
Right. So it's extremely rare. But if you're months out, in fact, you end up saving yourself money. And this is what I don't understand about Paramount. Their bean counters had to know that they weren't even going to come close to the spend of Crimes of Grindelwald and Wreck-It Ralph 2.
Mm-hmm.
But they knew they had a good movie. So I'm wondering, why did you, they actually
They're all
moved
different
it
studios.
up,
If you
too.
think you have a Disney studio, you have WB, and you have Paramount. They're
Yeah.
all competing studios.
Yeah.
So they want to have their pick in the lot. in
Yeah,
the lottery.
absolutely.
There you go.
But they had to have known, because they know what their budget for Instant Family is, and they knew that they were going to be outspent 5-1.
Yeah, and I think
So-
they could have been banking on their star power too with Rose Byrne and Mark Wahlberg.
Sure. And the trailer was funny. I don't know. There isn't more love that I can give. That this movie will most likely land in my top 10 of this year because I loved it so much. It's so rare. And to say again, I think in today's world, we're so distracted by so many things that are happening in real life. To go to the movies and escape, and to walk out to feel good, that means a lot.
It's refreshing.
And it's not overly long. The movie's not long at all, too. It's not even close to 2 hours. So that's why I think we need more movies like this, just to feel good walking out. You spend $10-12, whatever. You come out feeling good. I think that's important. It's a wonderful distraction. And if it inspires somebody to do good, like you said, even more so.
Yeah, and it's shedding positive light on real communities out there.
Absolutely. You know what else I loved about this movie? It didn't make a huge fact of the matter that these kids are Latino, right?
Yeah.
This movie doesn't go out of its way to say, hey, we got Latino kids here. No, you know why? Because Latino kids are all over the place. Like, it's fine. It's real life. It's like they weren't judging based on race, and we're not hiring Latino
personality.
kids. Right.
They were looking for personality in these kids.
Right.
And I did love that because you usually see, not to sound terrible, but I am Asian. It's like, I was part of the adopted Asian generation.
Sure.
And I make fun
I didn't
of
know
that
there was a
also.
generation.
No, this is what I call it. But it's like in the 80s and the 90s, so many Asian kids were getting adopted. I was definitely part of that generation.
Okay.
So you see a lot of Asian kids adopted. And then also in the 90s, you had like African American kids were adopted. It's like you see a lot of African Americans and Asians getting adopted. You don't really see, people don't shed light on Latino communities getting adopted. And I like that.
Yeah,
I like that they did that.
And again, going back to the honest factor, when it was brought up, it was always in a fun way. You have the grandmother who's trying to say her J's and then just saying Jacob instead of Jacob and it was just so funny. And then you also, have Mark Wahlberg who's trying to be honest and just not saying the right things, and he's just saying like, "Are we the white saviors?" Wait, no, I mean, I don't know, I just don't. And it was really funny because you know what? All you can do is be honest, and this is what they did. And if we don't, especially in this day and age, people tend to be scared to have certain conversations. So I thought it was important that they brought it up in the manner that they did.
To me, it adds to the realism of this.
It made it. It was funny too. Because they tried so hard, and it was genuine and sincere.
Genuine and sincere. Otherwise, it comes off as being racist. But it's genuine. But what I love about it is they just didn't make this big deal. Like, we didn't hire these kids, like, because there's a push, like, oh, we got to hire Latino. But these kids, they were so genuine and sincere. It doesn't matter. Like, it was great because they exist and it's fine. And this family adopted them because of they were genuine and real. They weren't picking because of race, color, creed, religion, or anything. I just love that aspect of the movie.
Like, they're only, and I don't even want to call it discrimination, their only things that they were really looking for were age range.
Right.
Like, ideally they wanted a kid, and they ended up getting kids along with the teenager. They were really just looking for age. It didn't matter the sex, the gender, or any of that, or race.
Yeah, they weren't like that woman who wanted a football player.
Yeah, like, she was very specific with what she wanted, and she got the complete opposite of what she was asking for.
It was so funny. So, yeah, Instant Family. I think it's I do believe it's the crowd pleaser of the year. I could easily see it again.
Yeah,
I'll easily get it on Blu-ray. So why don't we? Let's. We can wrap this up on Instant Family. Juliet, we'll start off with you. I'll go around the horn this way. So your final closing thoughts on Instant Family.
A great movie. If you haven't seen it, go see it. And if you have seen it, go see it again, because it honestly is that good. And thank you guys so much for letting me be part of the conversation.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I always really enjoy being, behind the scenes, pushing the buttons, but it was really fun to talk to you guys. So thank you.
I think the more people that talk about this movie is needed and necessary.
Yeah.
So you say, if you've seen the movie, tell somebody else. I've been like trying to shout off mountaintops.
I was trying to tell my parents to go see this. I was like, you'll enjoy this too, being adopted parents. I think it touches on a lot in a really nice way. It sheds the light on adoption community. It sheds light on foster communities, and it's feel good. And I love feel good. I'm such a sucker for feel good, and I cry. Any movie that emotionally moves me, I'm all for it, and I will definitely buy this when it comes out.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I welled up in a good way, and that hasn't happened in a movie. Like, I wasn't depressing welled up. It's like, oh, this movie works. Marisa, I want to say on behalf of Anatomy of a Movie, thank you for your insights today. I never knew, and to the audience.
Well, I don't talk about it a lot, but yeah.
But I appreciate it. It was from the heart. It meant a lot. The audience, this is real. Juliet, I want to say thank you for joining too, because I think the more people that talk about this movie, to inspire other people to talk about this movie, and whether people become parents, maybe they'll want to be a mentor or something.
Yeah, at least think about it.
Just be involved, help out. You can volunteer in most of these places. And just be better.
Yeah, and I want to
be good people.
Thank Sean Anders for making this movie. I think it's the best movie that he's laid out in his career thus far. Continued success. That's I can't say enough about this movie. I look forward to it on Blu-ray, but I will see it again in the theaters as well.
Yeah, I'd see it again.
Yeah, I would. Absolutely.
In a heartbeat.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up another Anatomy of a Movie here in the Popcorn Talk Network. Stay tuned, because we will be talking about movies like Mary Poppins, like Bumblebee. There's another big movie
We've covered
that's
all
coming
those
out.
ones in the past. Transformers.
We've covered Transformers.
Horrible Bosses.
Horrible Bosses. Horrible
Daddy
Bosses
Home.
2. Daddy's Home. Daddy's Home 2.
We've covered
We
them.
talked all about those movies. I want to know your thoughts on Instant Family. please feel free to comment. Inspire more people to go see it because it deserves to be seen on a big screen with an audience. You'll love it. That's it. Bottom line. Bye, folks. Until next time. See you later.
Producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network. We would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
I lay my troubled bones on